Last night, I was watching more Olympics, and I don't know if you all have been watching much of the Olympics. Last night, I was watching the amazing soccer game, but I've also spent a lot of time watching swimming and watching track, some exciting track runs. And I absolutely love the competitions, but even more than the competitions, I love the stories of the athletes themselves. And the media does a good job of telling those stories. But what I love is you have all the elements of great drama in these stories. You have the athletes as the noble protagonists seeking these very lofty goals. But as with any good drama, you have obstacles for the protagonists to overcome. And so, for example, some of the obstacles that they might need to overcome are either they're aging themselves, or they've got injuries, or they have some formidable foe that they have to conquer. And I would like to talk with you about Carrie Strug. Do you all remember Carrie Strug from the 96 Olympics? And she's an example of the noble protagonist, because coming into this Olympics, the United States gymnastics team had never won gold in the all-around competition. And there was the formidable foe because they were competing against Russia, and Russia had been dominating this event. And coming into the last round in the team event for gymnastics, the United States had a slight edge, but Carrie had 3 teammates who performed before her on the vault, and each of them had struggled with their vault. And so that put us in a difficult position trying to win the gold. So Carrie went, she did her first vault, but she totally nailed her ankle. She sprained her ankle really badly, and she got a relatively low score. It was about a 9.2. So she thought that she needed to vault again, even though she was hobbling. And she eventually made that decision, yes, I'm going to vault again. And she sprinted down, she went over that vault, and she stuck the landing. And she stayed just long enough with that landing, and then she collapsed in pain. But she had been able to nail, I think her score was about a 9.7. And that was enough for the United States to win gold. So that's an example of one of the noble protagonists and stories that stand out to me. Another one is less known, and this is a Brazilian runner, 2004 Olympics in Athens. His last name was Lima. He was winning the marathon with like 4 miles left to go. And this crazy Irish priest, check out, he's in a kilt, I don't know if you can tell, hops onto the course, runs over to Lima, and tackles him. He shoves him into the crowd. And Lima, I've run one marathon, and I know I was dying at about 21 miles. And so not only was it a matter of time, it's a matter of regaining composure. So Lima dragged himself out of the crowd, got back on course, finished the race, and he actually still earned a medal because he finished in 3rd place. So that is definitely a story of another noble protagonist. But the story or the drama I want to talk about today is the story of another protagonist. And this noble protagonist is a teacher. And this teacher felt a calling to go into the profession of education because she wanted to make a difference in the lives of young people. She wanted to do work that is significant, meaningful work. And the challenge for her, though, like any noble protagonist, she faces obstacles to overcome. So there's the obstacle of feeling like, hey, I've got 5 million demands on my time and not enough to do the time to do the things I want to do. She feels like, hey, kids are not arriving in my classroom ready to learn. Things outside of school affect what I'm trying to do. But perhaps the biggest obstacle that she faces is content coverage mentality. And you all have heard me talk about this before, but just the sense that, hey, I need to set aside, with this mentality, people think too many times, hey, I need to set aside what I know is effective instruction and instead have more superficial instruction where I'm just covering the content and I'm hoping kids will memorize the information long enough to do well on the test. But this teacher in spite of these obstacles, says, I'm going to try to do engaging work. Now, the thing is, she is gripped by the content coverage mentality much of the time, but she says, I'm going to do really engaging work with kids. I'm going to do it periodically. But the message that she gets in this drama, the message she gets, and this teacher is not in York County, I will say, but the message that she gets is that, and she gets the message from her other teachers, from her principal, even from her superintendent. The message is, hey, you really don't have time for engaging lessons with kids. But the turning point in this drama comes when she decides, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to look at my curriculum and I'm going to identify the big ideas, the most important content, the most important skills in my curriculum, and that's been referred to sometimes as power standards. So I'm going to look at the power standards of my curriculum, and I'm going to design incredibly engaging lessons that teach those power standards, that allow kids to make a meaningful contribution locally, nationally, or globally. And once she makes that decision, she still has a tough road. Okay, it doesn't mean that there aren't additional obstacles, but that allows her success. And this story isn't over, but one of the things that's going to help our protagonist is support from colleagues, support in terms of specific ideas, but also just the support in terms of saying, hey, the work that you're doing is important, it matters, it is significant. And I would liken that support to the support that Olympic athletes receive. And I snagged this image of an athlete at the current Olympics in front of cheering fans. So the support, both the validation, but then also ideas that colleagues provide are important for our protagonist. And this brings us to another story, and that's the story of the dot. It's a children's book, and it's written by Peter Reynolds, and it is a story of a teacher who encourages her student to make her mark on the world. And I'd like to show just a couple-minute video. I think it's about a 4-minute video, which is basically a read aloud of this wonderful children's book.
Art class was over, but Vashti sat glued to her chair. The paper was empty. Vashti's teacher leaned over the blank paper. "Ah, a polar bear in a snowstorm," she said. "Very funny," said Vashti. "I just can't draw." Her teacher smiled. "Just make a mark and see where it takes you." Vashti grabbed a marker and gave the paper a good, strong jab. "There!" Her teacher picked up the paper and studied it carefully. She pushed the paper toward Vashti and quietly said, "Now, sign it." Vashti thought for a moment. "Well, maybe I can't draw, but I can sign my name." The next week, when Vashti walked into art class, she was surprised to see what was hanging above her teacher's desk. It was the little dot she had drawn, her dot, all framed in swirly gold. "Huh! I can make a better dot than that." She opened her never-before-used set of watercolors and set to work. A red dot, a purple dot, a yellow dot, a blue dot. Vashti painted and painted. The blue mixed with the yellow, and she discovered that she could make a green dot. Vashti kept experimenting, lots of little dots in many colors. "If I can make little dots, I bet I can make big dots too." Vashti splashed her colors with a bigger brush on bigger paper to make bigger dots. Vashti even made a dot by not painting a dot. At the school art show a few weeks later, Vashti's many dots made quite a splash. Vashti noticed a little boy gazing up at her. "You're a really great artist. I wish I could draw," he said. I bet you can, said Vashti. Me? No, not me. I can't draw a straight line with a ruler. Vashti smiled. She handed the boy a blank sheet of paper. Show me. The boy's pencil shook as he drew his line. Vashti stared at the boy's squiggle, and then she said, Sign it. The end.
I love this book, and there's a couple different reasons I love the dot. One is I love that the teacher says to the student, hey, just leave your mark and see where it takes you. And then it's wonderful to see the journey that student goes on and all the dots that Vashti makes. But as inspiring as the mark that Vashti makes in the world is, what I love even more is the teacher. I find the teacher in the dot incredibly inspiring, and the impact that teacher has by encouraging the student to make her mark on the world. And increasingly, both in York County and across the country and globe, we have teachers who are saying, hey, yes, we're going to teach the content. We're not going to set aside the curriculum, but we're going to help our students leave their mark on the world. And I want to just cite just a couple of examples. And we had a number of teachers present with Angela Myers, our keynote speaker, at Alan November's conference. And in fact, the expenses for them presenting were even paid by folks outside of York County because of the power of these teachers' message. And that message was engaging students in work that matters. And I'll tell you just a couple examples. Melissa Overton and Beth Hoffman from Magruder Elementary School in Waller Mill, they gave a real challenge to students, and that was to manage charitable investment. Now, I'm not sure where the charitable donation came from. I think maybe parents had given the money. But in any case, the challenge to students was, we want you to make decisions regarding this money and how it's going to be donated to Oxfam. The purpose will be for a local community in a third world to fertilize the soil in their community. But the question is, what's going to be the best fertilization strategy? Should it be use of worms, or should it be use of manure? And so the students knew that they were doing an authentic task, a real task. And so what did they do? They dug into researching what would be the best approach. They conducted original research in their classrooms. And there was a purpose for figuring out, for example, watching the worms, taking data about the effect of the worms on the soil quality. There was an incredible purpose for their work. They Skyped with one another in classes across schools, trying to convince one another. Eventually, the decision was to invest in both. But the point I'm making is it's a false dichotomy between whether or not you teach the content or not. There were a ton of SOLs that were taught in that example in terms of science relating to soil, but kids were engaged in the work. They had the opportunity to make a difference. And I'll share just one example at the secondary level. Jan Myers also presented at the conference, a Grafton Middle School teacher, and she said to students, hey, in her reading class, and the reading class included both struggling readers and very talented readers, a full range. But she said, hey, we have a problem. One of the biggest challenges for adolescent readers is finding a book that's going to be a match for their interests. So help us solve that problem by creating movie trailers that are going to really persuade others that, hey, this is a good match for you. Those kids were incredibly engaged in that, were willing to work hard to do it, and they knew that their materials would be posted on YouTube, and also that QR codes would be affixed to the books in the school library, and so that their peers would be able to check out their work. So again, They're learning the skills and content of the course, but they're making a difference in the world. And those are just a couple examples. We have many other teachers throughout the division, outside the division, are doing similar work. I'm excited to see the exhibits of student and teacher work later this month in our district. And I want to talk with you about, okay, hey, what's the conceptual underpinning of all of this work, of this transformative learning, allowing kids to transform the world around them? And it goes back to conversations we've been having for a number of years. Remember John Antonetti's engagement cube when he spoke to all teachers? On the front of the cube are various design qualities of work that are likely to increase the extent to which kids are engaged, the extent to which they commit themselves to work. And so sense of audience, for example, of one's choice, learning with others, or collaboration is another. So this work that we're talking about, this transformative learning, has its roots in Antonetti's engagement cube. Also, many of us have read Schletke's work in terms of design qualities and student engagement. That relates directly to this. We've also had a lot of conversations about rigor. What are new notions of rigor? Not having a view of rigor that is about cramming a ton of more facts into kids' head faster and faster, but really is connected to these concepts. And this graphic came out of conversations we had as we looked at Tony Wagner writing about the importance of 21st century skills, as we looked at Daggett's work on rigor and relevance, and having kids apply content in not only predictable but unpredictable situations. And one way to look at it is as a tree with transformative learning being the tree itself. But what are the roots of it? Well, it really is based on our work with differentiation strategies, high-yield strategies, student engagement. You see a root that is rigor and relevance, 21st century skills. Students own the learning. So our work with Alan November in terms of getting kids to own the learning and how technology can help with that is one of the things that gives genesis to this concept of transformative learning. Some of you have been inspired by Dan Pink and his work on emphasis on autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And so this idea that when students have a sense of purpose, they're really going to commit themselves to the work. I have just 2 slides in this slide deck with a bunch of words on them, so humor me in reading these slides. First one is just a short summary of transformative learning. It engages students in rigorous work that makes a difference. Just 3 bullet points, and again, humor me with, this is the only slide with a bunch of words. The first bullet point under the introductory or big picture statement, it has to do with mastering contents and skills. So students master content and skills as they make a positive impact. The next bullet is all about student engagement, kids committing themselves, kids having a strong sense of ownership. And the last bullet, and Angela Myers is going to talk with us about this some today, is students using digital tools to both improve the quality of their work and amplify the impact of their work. And it's possible to make a difference without using digital tools. It's not a point that digital tools have to be a part of it. The point is that digital tools can improve the quality and amplify students' impact. I think those concepts are important to think about. I think it's important to see the connection in transformative learning to the work of Schletke, Antonetti, Pink, Wagner, Daggett. However, it's also helpful to just step back a moment and say, what is transformative learning? It's about having kids leave their mark in the world. And in so doing, they're going to learn, we structure the experiences so that they learn the content and skills of the curriculum. We are at a crossroads, though. It's a scary time. There are factors that continue to push this content coverage mentality. And the latest are the new SOL exams. Throughout the state of Virginia, scores on the Mass State test took a dive last year. Ours declined as well, and that's throughout the state. And next year, we have new tests in both English and science. Scores are anticipated to decline. So how are we going to respond to this challenge? Is our response going to be, hey, let's just try the superficial instruction, cram a bunch of facts into kids' heads? Or are we going to say, hey, the best strategy is Let's teach the content and skills of the curriculum, but do so in a way that engages kids in making a difference, because we know when they're fully committed, their learning is going to be much deeper and much longer lasting. Everybody in this room has a key role to play. This graphic, and you can't see the red against the black, but this graphic says you matter. Everybody in this room has an incredible role to play, and we intentionally have included teachers as a part of Leadership Academy, because everybody in this room, everybody needs to play the role of a leader in how we respond to the challenge that we face. Different people have different gifts. Some of you will be talented at saying, hey, let me look at the standards of learning and let me identify those power standards. Others may be really good at using digital tools to engage kids in collaborating with others or connecting with the global audience. But the point is that we need your unique gift in order to be successful as a district in facing the challenges that we do. If we have everybody joining us, then what we ultimately are going to be successful. I wanted to close my slide deck with the current U.S. gymnastics team that had won gold in the all-around. And it's an incredible moment of triumph. And we are going to have that sense of triumph as we move forward in this journey and pursue that engaging kids in rigorous work that makes a difference. So I thank you for your unique talents and gifts, and I thank you for joining us on this journey.